Hello, and welcome to the Otaku Clubhouse. And this is Sink or Swim. What is Sink or Swim? Well, it's where we discuss anime, video games, movies, and just about whatever media catches our eye. Then give our first impressions of them. From top to bottom, we give our ratings of a swim, a tread, a float, a drowning, and at worst, a sink. Comments are always welcome, and of course, we're waiting to hear what you have to say too. Let's get into it. Now that we've finished watching the new Netflix anime Yasuke, let's give a little synopsis. If you don't know the story of Yasuke, this kind of follows it, but clearly through the eyes of people who are very obsessed with anime.
Disclaimer, this is not historically accurate. Please, disclaimer.
Not at fucking all. The start of this shows you a bunch of warring soldiers fighting against a ton of different zombies and mechs right from the gate, and it's apparently the final battle of Oda Nobunaga. Yasuke, alongside of Nobunaga, who's getting his final drink in, and he commits seppuku. Yasuke is his second to cut off his head before he screams and dishonors himself. Flash forward to the future, and Yasuke's sitting out in a little Japanese town far off from any types of wars, just chilling and apparently running a boat. In the meantime, while he's running about, he also runs into a kid who seems to have taken a big liking to him, and his mother and sister, who seems to be extremely ill but hiding some type of strange power. Also in the meantime, there is apparently people running about looking for Yasuke and looking for this girl. For obvious reasons, Yasuke is still hiding out, which must be very difficult for a black guy in Japan. But apparently he's not the only black guy in Japan, more on that in a little bit. But the plot continues along with Yasuke agreeing to take the child and the mother up the stream to a doctor who can supposedly cure her illness and also supposedly stop this strange power that she seems to be exhibiting. Yasuke ultimately agrees after trying to convince them that it wouldn't be a good idea to head up north, as he assumes that there is more dangerous things going on within the warring states at the time. You also, during the episode, get flashes back to Yasuke when he first encounters Nobunaga. Those are pretty much what you would expect them to be, considering the fact that those are a bit closer to what actually is historically relevant, and they seem to have not changed that too much. But back in the current time of the story, Yasuke, alongside of the mother and the daughter, are currently floating upstream when all of a sudden they're attacked by 4 unknown assailants, one of them being a black man, one of them being some kind of giant Russian mommy furry, one of them being a giant robot, and another being some kind of strange dominatrix. After having a fight with them, the mother is what appears to be nearly fatally wounded, and the daughter activates her powers. It emits an enormous blast, and that's the end of the episode, showing Yasuke get blown back into the water and losing consciousness. And that's the first episode. Now, what did you guys think of the first episode of Yasuke?
I'm gonna have to be honest. I thought it was kind of boring, bro.
You serious?
Yeah, man. It's like when you have a bunch of those like foods, like you got some fried chicken, you got some watermelon, you got some cornbread, separately, in like a single plate, they're all pretty good. But like you put them in a blender, it starts getting kind of weird. I wasn't expecting it to be like robots and shit in it. It definitely seems like it's written by somebody who's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have Yasuke. Okay, and they're gonna be robots, and they're gonna be zombies, and they're gonna be magicians, and we're gonna have astral projection, and it's gonna be awesome. Okay. Execution, I'm not averse to a show like that, but it just seems like it was just all kind of thrown in. I mean, I'm sure they'll elaborate on where the robots and shit come from, but in like a time period like that, I would have liked it to be a little bit more grounded.
You think they're gonna elaborate on where the robots and shit come from? They're not. Let's actually talk about the production of this anime. This is created and directed by Lesean Thomas, and if you didn't know, he's the co-creator and director of the Boondocks television show. He's also the creator of Black Dynamite, another Adult Swim show, another anime-style black person show. His most recent project was Cannon Busters, which we actually watched, and that is one that he had complete 100% creative control of. And as a reminder, that anime had a main character who looked like Spike from Cowboy Bebop except black, and he had one set of powers, but then the world also had mechs, and it also had transforming like Kamen Rider or Guyver style, and it also had, you know, all this other stuff in it. And like one of the criticisms I had of that show is that, wow, this is like his first anime, so he's just putting in all the shit he likes from anime into this. With Yasuke, it's similar to that, but I think it's a lot more dialed back than what we know this guy is capable of. And, you know, I was also expecting more historically accurate, more grounded show. But having said that, I don't think there's anything overbearing about this. I just think it's a different take. Like we've seen cyberpunk, but set in the past shit before, so I don't really have a problem with that premise at all, as long as the execution is. And I, for one, thought the execution was pretty damn good.
I do agree with your fears, I'd say. Lesean Thomas seems to have a real knack for putting everything he likes into an anime. Much like you said with Cannon Busters, it had just about everything that you would expect from an anime. And this also has a bunch of stuff, but I feel as though it does exist a little bit less jarring. I don't know why. It might just be the fact that when I look at this, my brain kind of bounces back to the whole Afro Samurai type style.
Mm-hmm.
Where Afro Samurai also had tons of stuff like that, but it also fit a little bit better because it was a bit darker. I'm not sure why that works so much better in my head, but I think that the combination of the mechs and I'm assuming the weird beastkin creatures and these demons and stuff, I'm really hoping that it works out a little bit better than Cannon Busters is.
Yeah, but Cannon Busters was a huge turnoff because it was just thing after thing after thing after thing in the first episode, and the pacing wasn't good at all.
Yeah, the pacing for this feels much better just off the bat. In the first episode, you really don't get any serious fighting or anything. The only time that you get a real fight in is at the very end of the episode. There's a little bit of fighting towards the middle part when you see a flashback and you see Yasuke doing fucking boxing and shit, which is just like, oh, bro, why'd you do that?
Because he's black.
But it ultimately looked good too. Like the combat that they had in it, everything looks really good because of course it does. It's Mappa, and they have Netflix's money behind them. So I'm not doubting that the animation for things is going to look good. All the character designs I feel look like the most Mappa designs I've ever seen. Like all the character designs just look extremely... What's the way I'm looking to say this? It reminds me a lot of Dororo.
Yeah.
Like, everybody looks like that. It's like basically if you just took Hyakimaru out of that and put Yasuke in. Which, Yasuke looks pretty good too. His design. I like his design a lot better than what I had thought it was going to be. I was a little worried it was just going to be like a few of the other depictions of Yasuke where he's a bald-headed big black guy. They gave him dreads, which, you know, it's a fucking anime. Everybody wants to give him dreads or white hair. But I think he looks pretty cool. His design's really the only one that stands out in the main cast. Although there is a weird... I mentioned it before. This weird, giant, furry...
Russian werewolf
lady who apparently just pulls some poor, unknowing Japanese dude to the side and fucking seduces him?
Well, she got big booba. That's all she needs. There's another thing I wanted to talk about. Like, aesthetics are good, right? Even if you're worried about the premise and the concept, all the mechas and shit, the aesthetics are good. Getting into, like... We watched the Japanese audio with English subtitles, and it's kind of weird. Like, these subtitles are kind of cursed, bro. Like, they have a bunch of untranslated words in there, which isn't a problem, especially if you're used to, like, Japanese media. You'll know what some of these things say. But it also has some weird moments, like when Yasuke is talking to the group with the werewolf in it, the let's just say the antagonistic group. Apparently, they're speaking in English, and then he says something in Japanese, but everything has been in Japanese so far, so the subtitles just says quickly in Japanese, and then he just says the thing, and it's like very confusing. I'm not sure who's in charge of that.
Yeah, I assume that Yasuke's voice actor may also be able to actually speak English. The Japanese voice actor for Yasuke named Jun Soejima,
which we saw in Kamen Rider 01.
Yeah, that's really the only place that we know him from. I'll probably flash up a picture of him, but I don't want to say anything, but I assume that the reason that he got the role is probably because
when we were watching, I said, wow, this guy sounds black the first time Yasuke talked. Turns out he actually was black.
Yeah, and I'm looking into it, and he was born and raised in Japan. What else is there?
The music.
What did you think of the music with it? Because I remember that Felix pointed out that the music for it was a little better than average.
Music's produced by Flying Lotus.
Which, I don't really know much about Flying Lotus aside from the name value. Flying Lotus is in the vein of like Nujabest and whatnot, right?
Yeah, he makes lo-fi hip-hop to study/relax too.
I think one of the major things with that is the fact that in any type of Lesean Thomas picture, any type of Lesean Thomas show, I'm not sure what to say there, but any type of Lesean Thomas show, he seems to emphasize music as one of the key selling points. So it's good to hear that there's some decent music in there, good production values right across the board. One of the things that I look forward to, really, is since we didn't get to see it in the first episode, is hearing the opening and the ending themes. I'd like to see what they do with that.
I didn't really think that the music was all that great. Nothing really stood out aside from the song that played at the end. I don't know if that's supposed to be the opening or if it's going to be the ending, but like the music for the battle was just, it was noise. The background music when Yasuke was walking around in the bar and everything, it's whatever. I mean, it's different, but it's not like a soundtrack that I'm gonna really remember. You know what I'm saying? It's not something I'm gonna go out of my way to find and like download the songs on YouTube or whatever.
I guess you can say it's just music that the genre doesn't personally appeal to you. Because I thought like the music that plays when they first cut to 20 years later and he's rolling up the river, that music was pretty good. Like, but then again, I am a savant for this genre. Do a lot of studying/relaxing in my day.
I think that just across the board things were high. The only noticeable low, I would say, is the fact that it's only going to be 6 episodes. That's what I know, like, right now. And I feel that there are going to be one of those stories that could have ultimately been done in like maybe 4 episodes, and we're gonna end up having 6 because Netflix would have commissioned like, no, we can't only have 4 episodes or a movie.
It could have just been a movie.
It could have. I mean, there is a Yasuke movie coming out. The reason for how short it is I assume the actual history of Yasuke is not that expansive. Anybody who would read into the history, the literal history of Yasuke, and not any of the flanderized, overly romanticized versions of it, would realize that in truth, Yasuke was a samurai. The probably most interesting thing about him is how close he became with Nobunaga. He and Nobunaga apparently did have somewhat of a friendship, and that was due in part to the fact that Nobunaga was an eccentric leader who, when he was faced with things that he didn't quite understand or know, he became incredibly enthralled with the idea of figuring out why they existed. One of those being, when he first saw Yasuke, he was confused as to why a person's skin would be so dark, and he thought that he was dirty. And
or another example, which they showed in the episode, was him asking Yasuke's name and him giving him a bunch of African gibberish. And he's like, you know what? We'll just call you Yasuke for short.
Yeah. I'm just very positive on this, and I can't sit around and speak too highly about it without sounding like I'm just going to go on a long rant. But the one thing I'm really looking forward to is seeing what the action does Because, like I said, from the first episode, things seem to be well animated. I don't think that the mech was CG. I'm not sure. Was it? Do you guys remember?
No, it was drawn. It was 2D.
Yeah, which clearly goes to show that they were given, like, enough to really put into that. The music is going to end up being a thing. We'll see where it goes. You know, we're never going to get a Nujabes soundtrack again, unfortunately. This is probably going to end up being the closest that we get to one, in all honesty. So we'll look forward to that as well. So, you guys got anything else you want to say about it?
In terms of the character designs, I don't really like any of them aside from Yasuke. I think, like, that Russian bitch she looked like she smelled like onions. I like the little witch doctor dude. He looked kind of funny, kind of cool. That's about it. Those are the only ones that stood out to me. There was a lot of, like, little bit player villains who just looked like niggas who walked out of, like, Spirit Halloween.
I'm surprised you didn't like the giant Russian fur mommy.
No, like I said, she looked like she stink. Like, she looked like she smelled like fucking onions and, like, bell peppers.
It stinks in a good way?
No.
What are your ratings?
I give this one swim. Easy for me. At first, when I saw the mechas and shit, I was like, but the fact that, like I said before, we know what this guy is capable of, and the fact that it was dialed back from that is more than enough for me to, you know, give this the benefit of the doubt. And I like a lot of other stuff too, so I'm gonna give this a swim.
It's gonna be a float for me for now. Maybe it'll change in the future, but it's nothing that's really impressing me about it. It's not a show that I'm, like, super excited to watch the next episode, and I don't want to give it, like, an unfair rating because it's, you know, Yasuke. I'm not, you know, huge Yasuke stan. You know, I just knew about him. I knew he was Black Samurai. I mean, that's cool, but it's, as an anime on its own, it's not something that's gripping my attention.
Alright, and I will naturally give it a swim. I have fears, admittedly. I fear that the end of this, because, again, Lesean Thomas, maybe it's going to end with some kind of fucking Dragon Ball Z level. Yasuke gets the super golden hyper samurai armor and he starts flying through the sky and having a fucking battle with evil Ieyasu or some shit like that. But for now, the first episode seemed good. The first episode really evoked somewhat of a feeling of Ninja Scroll to me, but with obvious caveat of there being a bit more magic in this. Then again, there was magic in Ninja Scroll, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a swim, and that's just how I feel for it right now.
Now for your YouTuber call to action. Make sure to like the video. If you like this kind of content, leave a comment below on what rating you would give Yasuke.
Make me sick.
Subscribe and click the bell to be notified of our future videos. And remember, if you're black, you get a good rating from us. Let me stop.
See you in the next one.